In September 2018, my wife Sarah and I decided to celebrate our 7th wedding anniversary with a luxury cruise. It was a long-held dream of ours, always postponed by busy work schedules and savings goals. Finally, we booked a 12-day voyage across East Asia aboard the magnificent Quantum of the Seas. The ship was a stunning floating city carrying over 6,000 passengers and crew, beginning its journey from the port of Yokohama, Japan. The ship was truly colossal. The moment we stepped aboard from the Yokohama pier, it felt like entering another dimension. The amenities were incredible: multiple swimming pools, a surf simulator, an observation capsule that soared high above the sea, a West End class theater, and more restaurants than I could count. Our cabin was on deck 10, port side, with a private balcony offering an endless view of the East China Sea. The first few days were a dream vacation come to life. We enjoyed every meal, tried various drinks, and explored every corner of this floating paradise. The ship had become our entire world. Everything changed on our 4th day at sea, somewhere between the coasts of South Korea and Taiwan. We were having breakfast in the main dining room on deck 4 when I noticed a woman sitting alone by a window. It wasn't unusual to see solo travelers, but there was something odd about her. She was in her late 40s, with shoulder-length blonde hair, and she wore a striking emerald green dress that sharply contrasted with her anxious expression. She constantly scanned the room as if looking for someone, repeatedly checking her phone and barely touching her food. Sarah noticed me staring, but I just shrugged. Later that afternoon, as we were relaxing in the quiet solarium area on deck 14, I saw her again. Still in the same green dress, she was pacing frantically. She approached several crew members, showing them a photo on her phone, but every conversation ended with a sympathetic shake of the head. Her body language radiated a deep desperation that made me feel profoundly uncomfortable for reasons I couldn't explain. When Sarah went back to the cabin to rest, curiosity drove me to follow the woman from a distance. I watched her go to the guest services desk on the Royal Esplanade on deck 5, where she spoke with the staff for nearly an hour. Even from afar, I could see her agitation escalating. Her voice grew louder, her hands gesturing wildly. The staff tried to remain professional, but it was clear they were becoming overwhelmed. Eventually, a uniformed security officer approached, spoke with her quietly, and then escorted her away from the desk. That night at dinner, I mentioned the woman to our table mates, a retired couple from Vancouver, Canada, named George and Helen. As I described the woman in the green dress, Helen's expression immediately turned serious. "Oh dear," she said, leaning forward. "We heard the rumors. She's looking for her travel companion. Apparently, her friend never returned to their cabin 2 nights ago." George added grimly, "The ship's security is investigating it quietly. The cruise lines don't like to publicize these things." The next morning, I woke up at 6 a.m. and decided to take a walk on the deserted promenade on deck 5. The ship's atmosphere in the early dawn felt surreal, silent, and empty. As I passed the lifeboat area, I heard the sounds of a tense conversation. Curiosity got the better of me, and I hid behind one of the lifeboats to listen. There, the woman, now in jeans and a sweater, was in a heated argument with 3 crew members. One of them, a senior officer, was trying to calm her down. "You don't understand," the woman said, her voice trembling with emotion. "Amanda wouldn't just leave. She wouldn't go without telling me. We've been best friends for 25 years. Something happened to her, and you're all acting like she just wanted some time alone." The officer replied in a calm but firm voice, "Ma'am, we understand your concern, and we are taking this very seriously. We have checked all public areas and reviewed security footage. Sometimes on a ship this large, a person just needs some space for themselves." "You think she's playing hide and seek with me?" the woman retorted in disbelief. "Amanda is a type 1 diabetic. She needs her insulin shots, which are left in our cabin. She hasn't been back to get them. She's been missing for 3 days now." The implication of her words sent a chill down my spine. This wasn't just a friend's quarrel. This was a life-or-death situation. The officer's tone became more serious. "We are aware of her medical condition, ma'am. That is why we have contacted the Japanese Coast Guard. We are re-reviewing all footage from the last 72 hours. What about the cameras?" the woman pressed. "When was the last time you saw her on the recordings?" There was a brief pause before the officer answered. The last confirmed sighting of your friend was at 11:52 p.m. on Wednesday, leaving the Vintage's wine bar on deck 5. After that, what? She demanded. After that, we lost track of her, the officer admitted quietly. The woman let out a heartbreaking sob. So, you're telling me that somewhere between the bar and our cabin, which is only a 5-minute walk, my best friend simply vanished on a ship in the middle of the ocean? I couldn't bear to listen any longer. I slipped away, feeling sick to my stomach for having eavesdropped on the worst moment of someone's life. The rest of the cruise felt entirely different. The ship's magnificence, which was once awe-inspiring, now felt menacing and claustrophobic. Every corridor seemed to hold a secret, and every dark corner looked suspicious. The vastness of the ship now became a source of fear. There were too many places for someone to disappear. From the whispers of other passengers, we learned the missing woman's name was Amanda Mitchell, age 48, from Seattle, Washington. Security on the ship was subtly tightened, but for most passengers, the party continued as if no tragedy was unfolding. On our last night, while packing, Sarah found a slip of paper that had been pushed under our cabin door. The handwriting was shaky. If you're the man who was listening near the lifeboats yesterday morning, please meet me near the North Star entrance on deck 15 at midnight. I have to tell someone what really happened to Amanda. The crew won't listen. Jennifer. After a long debate, we decided to go. At 11:55 p.m., we arrived at the quiet lounge area near the North Star observation capsule. Jennifer was already there, staring out at the pitch-black ocean. She looked years older than she had just a few days ago. Her eyes were red and swollen. Amanda didn't just disappear, she whispered. Someone on the ship had been following her for days. She was getting strange notes slipped under our door. That night, she went to the bar to meet someone who claimed to have information about her stalker. She never came back. Jennifer explained that she had tried to report it, but security dismissed it as passenger drama. She even found a threatening note in their cabin's trash can, but her report was ignored. The next morning, we docked in Keelung, Taiwan. I never found out what happened to Amanda Mitchell. Jennifer gave me her contact information, but I never heard any news. When I got home, I searched online and was shocked to see how often people go missing from cruise ships, with many cases never being solved. That experience changed my perspective forever. The ocean is vast and unforgiving. I still think about Amanda sometimes, wondering about her fate. But mostly, I remember the desperate look in Jennifer's eyes, who had to watch her best friend be swallowed by a mystery in the middle of the East China Sea. In June of 2022, I decided to treat myself to a solo cruise for my 40th birthday. I was in the process of recovering from severe professional burnout and a complicated separation. My therapist suggested that a little time alone might help me process everything and gain a new perspective. I booked a 7-day cruise around the Greek islands on the MSC Fantasia, thinking that being surrounded by the blue of the Aegean Sea and endless entertainment would be the perfect escape from the chaos of my life. As a 40-year-old woman traveling alone, I was initially a bit anxious. However, everyone assured me that cruise ships were very safe environments with security at every corner. The MSC Fantasia was a large ship carrying about 4,000 passengers, yet the atmosphere felt warmer than the giant floating cities you often see advertised. My cabin was on deck 9, an interior cabin without a window, but I chose a more spacious type as I planned to spend a lot of time there writing and reflecting. The first few days went exactly as I had hoped. I woke up late, enjoyed breakfast with a sea view, spent hours reading a novel by the pool, and watched theater shows in the evening without having to worry about anyone else's schedule. For the first time in the past year, I felt like I was starting to rediscover myself outside of my job and my failed relationship. Everything changed on the third day while our ship was docked in Santorini. I returned to my cabin around 11 p.m. after enjoying a walk through the stunning town of Fira. However, I had trouble with my electronic key card. The chip didn't seem to be reading, and no matter how many times I tapped it, the door wouldn't open. After a few frustrating minutes, a cabin steward appeared from the end of the hallway and asked if I needed help. His name was Alessio, probably in his early 30s with dark curly hair and a thick Italian accent. He wore the standard housekeeping staff uniform with a name tag pinned to his chest. "Let me try," he said with a seemingly friendly smile, taking my key card. He managed to open the door on his first try with a special technique. "These cards can be a bit tricky sometimes," he explained, handing it back. "But I've been working on ships for 5 years. I know all their tricks." I thanked him and was about to enter my cabin, but he continued the conversation. "You're traveling alone?" he asked. "Yes, I noticed because I clean your room every day and there are only things for one person." Something about the way he said that made me a little uncomfortable. It felt like he was paying too much attention to the details of my private space, but I tried to think positively. Maybe he was just being friendly. I smiled and confirmed. "That's very brave," he said, leaning against the doorframe which slightly blocked my way. "Many women are afraid to travel alone. But you seem very independent." The way he said the word independent with a pause and a gaze that felt far too intense made my skin crawl. I mumbled that I was tired and needed to rest, but he didn't get the hint. "If you need anything during your cruise, anything at all, just call for Alessio, okay? I work the night shift, so I'm always around when things get quiet." He finally moved aside, but not before looking me up and down in a way that felt completely inappropriate. I quickly went inside, slammed the door, and locked the deadbolt and security chain. The next morning, I convinced myself I was just overreacting. However, when I returned to my cabin that afternoon, I knew immediately that something was wrong. My collection of silk scarves, which I had left casually on a chair, was now neatly arranged on the bed in a strange pattern. My leather-bound journal, which I had tucked under a pile of clothes in my suitcase, was now sitting on top of everything, as if someone had read it and deliberately didn't hide it again. That night, when I returned around midnight, Alessio was waiting in the hallway near my room, pretending to tidy his cleaning cart. "Ah, perfect timing," he said, standing up and blocking my path. "I was hoping to see you." I wanted to apologize if I was too forward yesterday. I just nodded, hoping he would leave quickly. Instead, he stepped closer. "It must be lonely, traveling by yourself. Maybe you'd like some company tomorrow night? I finish work at 2 a.m. I know some very private and romantic spots on the ship." "No, thank you," I replied firmly. "I'm enjoying my time alone." But Alessio was unfazed. "I think you're just being shy," he said, reaching out to touch my arm. I pulled my arm away and told him more forcefully to leave me alone. His friendly smile vanished instantly, replaced by a dark flash of anger in his eyes. "You think you're too good for me?" he hissed. "Just because you're a passenger and I'm crew?" The threat in his voice was unmistakable, and I realized I was completely alone in the hallway with him. I managed to get past him and locked myself in my room, faintly hearing his chilling laughter outside. Over the next 2 days, the terror from Alessio intensified. He would appear wherever I was, in the restaurant, at the theater, on the pool deck, always watching from a distance. Every time I returned to my cabin, more of my personal belongings had been touched. The final straw was finding a small note tucked inside my journal that simply said, "I'm watching you." I tried to report him to guest services, but their response was deeply disappointing. The female officer said it was probably just a cultural misunderstanding, and that I might be overly sensitive. They promised to talk to him, but I knew my report wasn't being taken seriously. That night, I couldn't sleep. Around 2 a.m., I heard the beep of the card reader at my door, followed by the sound of the handle turning. I froze in my bed. Whoever was out there tried the handle and swiped the card again and again. The only thing preventing them from getting in was the security chain I had latched from the inside. After about 10 minutes, I heard footsteps walking away. Early the next morning, I went to guest services and demanded to speak with the head of security. This time, I was taken seriously. The head of security, a stern man named Captain Bianchi, listened to my story carefully. The fact that a crew member had tried to enter a passenger's room at 2 a.m. was a very serious security breach. An hour later, Captain Bianchi returned with horrifying news. When interrogated, Alessio admitted to checking on me because he was worried. When they searched his locker, they found dozens of photos of me he had taken secretly on his phone. Worse, they also found photos of other female passengers from previous cruises, along with stolen personal items like earrings and scarves. Alessio was immediately detained in the ship's brig and was to be handed over to the authorities when we arrived in Venice the next day. Captain Bianchi apologized profusely and offered to move me to a suite for the final night. I refused. I just wanted to get off that ship. The experience destroyed what was meant to be a healing vacation and left me with a deep, traumatic scar. To this day, I have never been on a cruise again, and whenever I stay in a hotel, I obsessively check the locks and security chain over and over again before I can finally try to sleep. Back in October of 2024, long after the chaos of the pandemic had subsided, my husband, Kenji, and I decided to embark on an adventure we had long dreamed of. A 15-day trans-Pacific cruise from Tokyo to Vancouver. Both of us, now in our early 40s, had dedicated our lives to high-pressure medical professions. I as a nurse in a cardiac care unit and he as a flight paramedic. We desperately needed a break from the exhausting routine. We chose the cruise ship Starlight Odyssey, which promised modern safety protocols and medical facilities, giving us peace of mind for sailing across the vast ocean. The Starlight Odyssey was a magnificent, colossal ship designed to accommodate over 3,000 passengers. Despite sailing at nearly full capacity, its clever design created plenty of personal space and a tranquil atmosphere. Our cabin was on deck 10, complete with a private balcony offering an endless view of the blue Pacific Ocean. The first few days were a dream come true. The relaxed atmosphere, friendly service, and the serenity of the sea were the perfect medicine for our weary souls after years of facing emergencies. Everything changed on the 7th day of our voyage. We were then in the middle of the North Pacific Ocean, more than 1,000 miles from the nearest land. We were enjoying afternoon tea in the Horizon Lounge when a small commotion caught our attention. A man in his 70s, traveling with his wife, suddenly collapsed while carrying a tray of cakes and tea back to his table. Our medical instincts instantly took over. As we rushed closer, we knew this was no ordinary fainting spell. The man, who we later learned was named Arthur, was still conscious but gasping for breath. His face was pale and he was clutching his chest, showing signs of immense pain. His wife, Eleanor, knelt beside him in a panic. As a cardiac nurse, I recognized the symptoms all too well: a massive heart attack. Kenji immediately checked his vital signs while I tried to calm Arthur and his crying wife. The ship's medical team arrived within minutes, led by a doctor named Dr. Chen. He was a man in his late 30s who looked competent, yet his expression betrayed a sense of tension. They quickly prepared a stretcher to move Arthur to the ship's medical facility located on Deck 3. Getting Arthur safely through the ship's crowded corridors became their top priority. Although it looked modern and clean, the medical center on the ship was essentially a remote emergency clinic. The facility had a few beds, EKG equipment, and basic medications. However, I quickly realized how limited their resources were compared to a cardiac care unit in a hospital. There was none of the advanced equipment Arthur needed to survive a crisis of this magnitude. Dr. Chen confirmed that Arthur needed an immediate angioplasty procedure or even emergency bypass surgery, actions that were impossible to perform in the middle of the ocean. The nearest capable hospital was in Honolulu, Hawaii, which was still over 800 miles away. Even at full speed, the ship would take at least 24 hours to get there. The captain immediately decided to divert the ship's course, but everyone in the room knew we were in a race against a clock that was not on our side. Through satellite communication, Dr. Chen continuously consulted with cardiac specialists on land to try and stabilize Arthur's condition. However, as the night wore on, his condition deteriorated drastically. Around 3 a.m., a sorrowful scream from Eleanor woke up part of the Deck 3 corridor. Arthur's heart had stopped beating. Dr. Chen and his team, assisted by Kenji, performed CPR for nearly an hour, far exceeding the standard protocol in a hospital. Desperation was clearly etched on Dr. Chen's face as he fought against the limitations of his equipment. Arthur was pronounced dead at 3:32 a.m., while the ship was still more than 600 miles from Honolulu. The sound of Eleanor's cry at that moment was the most heartbreaking expression of grief I had ever heard. We both wept with her, feeling the tragedy of watching someone die when proper help was only a matter of geography and ocean. Death in the middle of the ocean brought a new layer of horror. The ship had a small morgue on a lower deck where Arthur's body had to be stored until we reached port. Eleanor was faced with a heart-wrenching choice: leave the ship at the next port or continue the journey with her husband's body. She decided to stay on board until Vancouver, where her son lived. The sad news spread quickly throughout the ship. The cheerful atmosphere that usually enveloped the crews instantly vanished, replaced by a fog of grief and heavy silence. All the entertainment events felt hollow and out of place. The entire ship seemed to be in mourning. Dr. Chen was visibly shaken by the experience. In our several conversations during the remaining days of the voyage, he confessed that this was his worst nightmare as a ship's doctor. He was used to handling seasickness or minor injuries, not a life or death situation that was beyond his capabilities. This incident had opened his eyes to the incredible vulnerability of being so far from civilization. This experience completely changed my view on the safety of cruise travel, especially for elderly passengers or those with pre-existing conditions. The medical facilities on a cruise ship are fundamentally not designed to handle complex medical emergencies. When you are thousands of miles from the nearest hospital, you are essentially gambling with your life, hoping that nothing serious will happen. After the cruise ended, Eleanor, with her son's help, filed a lawsuit against the cruise line. They alleged that the company had misrepresented the level of medical capability available on board. The case was eventually settled out of court, but it successfully highlighted the vast gap between passenger expectations and the harsh reality of medical care in the middle of an endless ocean.